It is time now for your Week 4 NFL Sunday Slate Pick 6. Live right here on this Football Friday on the early line. He is Joe, I am Ben. We both deliver a six-pack of bets. Again, the categories for the Pick 6, if this is your first Football Friday, or just need a reminder, our favorite touchdown score to find pay dirt this weekend. A Moneyline underdog in the year of the dog in the NFL to win outright. Our favorite under of the weekend, an alt line of the weekend, hopefully with some plus money. A yardage prop that we enjoy. And we combine forces for a two-leg, 6-point teaser. Where again, Joe, I have not been holding up my end of the bargain. I thought the Chargers plus 7.5 last week was an easy one in a game featuring 35.5 for a total against the Steelers. Game went under. Chargers lost by 10. I've really been screwing the pooch on that one. So we'll continue going around here for our Pick 6. But you have the honors, my friend. Your favorite TD score of the weekend is who and in what game?
All right, so keeping it simple here, there is probably no bigger revenge game on the board here, Ben, in Week 4 than Aaron Jones heading back to Lambeau here, only wearing a different uniform in this one here. And I have no doubt that we are going to get enough carries here and O'Connell feeding him in order to get him to do one of those Lambeau leaps, but only this time the Vikings uniform, not a Green Bay uniform. So I like him on an anytime touchdown at plus money.
He has already talked about seeing the Green Bay stands and the fans, and what might he do if he does, in fact, find pay dirt. He has scored twice this year. A rushing touchdown in the opener against the Giants was really good last week. Nearly 150 scrimmage yards, 102 on the ground, 46 as a receiver, and a receiving touchdown as well. Joe, I like the look. I think they will be trying to feed Aaron Jones in this game against the Green Bay Packers. My favorite touchdown score of the weekend is Marvin Harrison Jr. Even money plus 100 in a game that features the highest total of the weekend in Arizona. The Cardinals will host the Commanders. For reasons I think you're going to highlight in your Pick 6 in terms of the yardage prop, I'll just stress a few here. Marvin Harrison Jr., 3 receiving scores in his last 2 games after only a single grab in his debut, week number 1. Washington has the second worst pass defense in the NFL this year, nearly 256 per game. They had the worst passing defense in the NFL a season ago. I think Kyler Murray is going to have a big day. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to have a big day. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. does find his way to pay dirt. Again, I know you will have more to say on that game for your favorite yardage prop of the weekend. But it's been a year of the dog so far, Joe, through 3 weeks of this NFL season, and even a dog covering to start Week 4 on that closing line last night between the Giants and the Cowboys. What is your favorite money line underdog to win outright of Week 4?
Yeah, so I'll keep it simple. We talked about this early in the show, Ben, is that I don't want to get up and on Monday and be like, wow, I can't believe I didn't bet the Buffalo Bills on the money line at plus money, because I don't know how many more times we're going to have an opportunity to do that. I get the best playing right now through the first 3 weeks of the season. There is no better quarterback than Josh Allen. The offensive line also doing a great job of protecting him. We've got major issues, not only on the offensive line of the Ravens, which is a problem given the fact that Von Miller and company are healthy and they're getting after the quarterback. And you couple in the fact that that secondary is extremely vulnerable of the Ravens. I like him to rip them apart in the middle of the field. Yeah. Expect big days from the tight ends and expect Buffalo to win this game at plus money.
Yeah, I think it's a really good look, Joe. We've talked about Buffalo and what they have done as an underdog since they started winning divisional titles in 2020. Only 14 times, 8-6 against the number, including already once this year, week number 2, outright catching nearly a field goal in Miami against the Dolphins. They are getting 2.5 here against the Ravens. A really big game for Baltimore. If they are to lose at home in the Charm City, the flock will fall to 1-3. That's a lot of ground to make up in the competitive AFC North and, of course, just in the overall AFC postseason picture after the opening month of this NFL season. My moneyline underdog, don't love it. Didn't love a lot of dogs this week. couldn't get behind the 5.5-point dogs or greater to win outright. I just kept poking holes. At first, I had the Rams +3 in Chicago. Didn't love that. Don't love this one. I will preface with that. But I don't think the Raiders should be laying a number to anybody right now, and it's just 1.5. So I'm going to go Cleveland +110. The Browns have terrible offensive line issues to start, and you would actually think that's the strength for Las Vegas. Max Crosby and the boys, Christian Wilkin up front, getting after Deshaun Watson, who was sacked 8 times last week by the Giants. As I say this, I further do not love it. But Cleveland's only win this year as an underdog on the road against Jacksonville. In fact, under Kevin Stefanski, Cleveland is 16-15-1 against the spread as a dog since the start of 2020. 11 of those 16 covers, an outright victory. If Cleveland is ever going to figure it out, if Deshaun Watson is ever going to figure it out, if Kevin Stefanski is the offensive mind we give him credit for being, 2-time NFL Coach of the Year, figured things out with Joe Flacco last year to earn a playoff spot, they have to accommodate the offensive line woes and make Deshaun Watson even into a serviceable quarterback. Joe, I'm not sure if you saw this earlier in the week. The Browns have had a laundry list, a CVS receipt type amount of quarterbacks play for them since the turn of the millennium. Yeah. And Deshaun Watson has the third to last and the worst seasons in terms of drop back EPA, expected points added, out of any of those quarterbacks. Third last, worst. Only Brady Quinn with some slander sandwiched in between. It has been abysmal for Cleveland offensively. They've had a week to prepare, understanding their offensive line woes. They got to figure it out this week in Las Vegas.
Yeah, and it starts with not having Deshaun Watson being sacked the most of any quarterback in the NFL through 3 weeks, 16 times. And he is under constant duress. So that's a recipe for disaster. Can they contain Max Crosby? Will be the big issue. If they can, then yes, they are very much a live dog in this spot on the road, Ben.
You got to make those adjustments week to week. Kevin Stefanski is paid to do so. Deshaun Watson was asked about more design run plays to take some of the onus off the banged-up O-line. He said, I'm not a running back. Brother, you got your guaranteed money. Go lay the body out on the line, please. Will ya? Favorite under of the weekend, Joe Ranieri. You talked about this when we broke down the NFC South showdown earlier in the week. It was your first bet of week number 4. What's the game?
Yep. Yeah, first bet here. I love the under in the Atlanta and the New Orleans game. It was 43.5. It's down to 42.5. And I still like it because I think the first 1 to 20 is going to win this game. I still don't buy Kirk Cousins. And I know Kirk Cousins, since he leads the league in underthrown balls so far this year. He's still having a hard time with that torn Achilles on planting it and throwing off of it, Ben. I do think, of course, the defense of the New Orleans Saints is going to take away Drake London with Marshawn Lattimore, which means it's going to be the Bijan Robinson show for offense. And the problem with that is we're talking about a top 5 defense against the rush here in New Orleans. Yeah. We already saw how you slow down the New Orleans offense last week with the Eagles. They gave us the blueprint. I think this has got 2013, 2014 written all over it.
You know, Joe, again, I have said it. I was going to look at Atlanta's scoring output for a reason. I was probably going to circle their games each and every weekend to try to bet overs. Hasn't happened. The Falcons ended out week 3 as one of 8 teams to play all 3 of their games to an under so far this year. Believe me, I've been chasing. I chased it in week number 2, Monday night against the Eagles. Under. I chased it last week against the Chiefs. Under. Despite 30 points at the break. All right, I won't get into it. The Falcons have spurned me.
Yes,
I agree. I think we see a lack of scoring on Sunday in the A. My favorite under, the Pick 6 continues next. Our Week 4 Sunday slate Pick 6 continues live right here on this Football Friday on the early line on SportsGrid. Joe gave you his favorite under of the weekend right before the break. Saints, Falcons under 42.5. I'm going to Indianapolis. Steelers and the Colts under 39.5. Much like the Falcons, the Steelers are one of 8 teams that end out week number 3 with all 3 of their games trending toward the under. And not just under in all 3, Joe, but by the largest under margin in the National Football League, by nearly 2 touchdowns. 12.8 points per game. All right, what have the numbers been? Have they been high like they have been for the Falcons? No. The Steelers have had the 2 lowest totals of each of the past 2 weekends, and they're still considerably under. The Pittsburgh Steelers are the best scoring defense in the National Football League, the only team allowing less than 10 points per game on average through the opening 3 weeks. Now, you said Anthony Richardson's right arm has to be the difference for Indianapolis to hand the Steelers their first loss of this year. I would say, yeah. I just don't trust it. Less than a 50% completion percentage. Okay, so Jonathan Taylor's been pretty good. The Steelers tied for the second best rushing defense in the NFL, allowing just over 71 yards per game. All to say, Joe, points at a premium, even if Indy does pull off the slight upset. I'm staying under 39.5.
Yeah, and we've said it, and we've noted it on this show before, Ben, when it comes to Mike Tomlin on the road, and what happens there. He tends to, shall we say, get a little conservative, and nobody has been more profitable to the under than Tomlin. And there's no reason to change that. 56, 23-2 to the under in road games in the last 10 years under Tomlin. Also 2-0 to the under on the road this year. Let's make it 3-0 on the road, Ben.
And substantially so, only 28 points, well under 42.5 week 1 in Atlanta, only 19 under 36.5. Again, it was the lowest number of week 2 against the Denver Broncos. All right, alt line, am I reading this correctly? Is Joe Ranieri looking at a kicker prop for the weekend?
I know, it's disgusting, but this is also the one game here, Ben, in which I think the most points are going to be scored this weekend, and anybody looking at the lines knows the highest price on the board is with Washington and Arizona, and I love Prater to get plenty of field goals here. He's actually had 2 or more field goals in 3 straight games to start the year here. We've already seen Washington and that defense not be very good. In fact, I think they've given up 3 field goals to Tampa and to Cincinnati already. The Giants, well, can't talk about that because they didn't have a field goal kicker. Otherwise, they would have had more field goals in that one as well. I think Prater, since Kyler Murray has returned midway through last season, he has been obviously a much better kicker. Getting 2.5 or more field goals, 3 field goals in this game, I don't think is a big ask with a line that's totaled at more than 50 points.
Highest total of the weekend. Love giving a little kicker love here on the show. My alt line of the weekend, J.Stroud, 3+ passing touchdowns at plus 270 against Jacksonville. Now, Stroud has been prolific. Of course, ran away with the Offensive Rookie of the Year award, led Houston to an AFC South crown and a playoff victory, but has only thrown for 3 touchdowns in a game twice in his career. The postseason against the Browns, he had 3. Last year in the regular season in November against the Buccaneers, he had 5. Jacksonville was the 3rd worst passing defense in the National Football League. Josh Allen had 4 passing scores last week against this Jags team. And he's the only good quarterback they've played so far this year. Tua Tagovailoa not great in week number 1, and Deshaun Watson stinks. So you might be thinking, all right, not a great sample size, despite the fact the Jags have been getting taken advantage of through the air. Joe, you said it earlier. 6.5 is the number. Houston favored. They're going to run the football. They're going to win this game comfortably. No, I think we're in for a little bit of a shootout in H-Town on Sunday. I think this game is close. I think the passing component has to be good for the Texans if they are going to even escape with an outright win against Jacksonville on Sunday. Give me C.J. Stroud, 3+ passing touchdowns with a big plus money sprinkle at plus 270.
He's not going to have a choice because I don't think this is going to be the best effort you're going to get all year from Jacksonville in this game against Houston. He might not have a choice, Ben, but to start airing it out early and often in that game.
Yep. So, Joe, we talked about it earlier for my anytime TD prop, even money plus 100 on the rookie wideout, the 4th overall pick from Ohio State, Marvin Harrison Jr. Because the Commanders are not a good defense, especially defending the pass. So Marvin Harrison Jr. going to find the end zone, and I would say end up with at least 68 receiving yards, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it opened up at 67.5, and that's just way too low, especially given the fact it looks like Trey McBride not going to be in this game with a
True.
concussion. You're seeing his targets go from 3 to 8 to 11. And we also just saw number one receivers against Washington secondary. Malik Neighbors, 10 for $127. Jamar Chase, 6 for 118. Oh, hell no. Yes, I think early and often here as well. This has got a 100-yard day written all over it for him.
And 67.5 is no longer there. To Joe's point, that's where it's opened. It's already up. That's substantial for a prop on a Friday ahead of an NFL Sunday slate. Already up by 4 yards to 71.5. Oh, and in week number 1, Baker Mayfield threw for 289 yards and 4 touchdowns against this Commanders defense. Yeah, it's been pretty easy to throw against Washington so far this year. My favorite yardage prop, also a receiving yards number. It's Khalil Shakir, Sunday night against Baltimore, over 48.5. Now, part of this has been the Ravens in the game scripts that we have seen. They were so far out in front last week against Dallas. The Cowboys added up a ton of yards. Dak threw for nearly 380 because they were up double digits against Gardner Minshew and the Raiders. Las Vegas threw for a ton. But Baltimore is the worst passing defense in the National Football League at this moment, and they have not been a good scoring defense either. I'll tell you on the other side why Khalil Shakir is going to take advantage for Buffalo on Sunday night, and then a teaser that will hit this weekend next. All right, let's finish out our pick six for the Sunday slate in week number 4 around the National Football League. He is Joe Ranieri. I am Ben Stevens. We are soon to get to our 2-leg 6-point teaser that I have not held up my end of the bargain. I have missed out on my leg each of the opening 3 weekends of this NFL season. Not in week number 4, but before I get there, Joe, I was just talking about Khalil Shakir, over 48.5 receiving yards for Buffalo Sunday Night Football against the Ravens. The Flock currently the worst passing defense in the National Football League. And Khalil Shakir, in this reworked offensive rotation and wide receiver room in Western New York, has been Josh Allen's top target. He's been over this number of 48.5 with at least 54 in each of the past 2 weeks. In fact, he is Buffalo's leading receiver. He is the only guy, Joe, with at least 100 yards and the only guy, Joe, with at least 10 receptions this season for the Bills. They haven't had to do much the last few weeks offensively, and that contributes to the lack of stats, I think, everybody offensively. But Khalil Shakir in this reworked lineup has been Josh Allen's top target. I think it continues against the Baltimore defense that has a lot to prove on Sunday night in the Charm City.
And he's a matchup nightmare for a secondary, Ben, there's an awful lot of holes in the middle of that field here, and coming out of the slot, that's a recipe for disaster. I'm with you. I think that's a huge connection this week in that game.
And I still think you're getting numbers that say, who is Josh Allen's favorite receiver? That's not Steph Diggs. That's not Gabe Davis. It's not the guys that we know. I think we can take advantage on Sunday night. All right, 2-leg, 6-point teaser. Here we go, Ranieri. Where are you going first?
All right, I'm going to keep this very simple. I think this is blowout regardless. So I am going to tease the New York Jets down to -1 from the current line of 7, even if it goes to 7.5, still 1.5.
Yeah.
Listen, the Broncos did not go home. They are practicing this week in West Virginia rather than flying back home because they were in Tampa and pulled off that upset win last Sunday. The Jets are on extra rest here because they played on Thursday night last week. Also, keep in mind, the offensive coordinator for the New York Jets is named Nathaniel Hackett. He was the former head coach of the Denver Broncos before Sean Payton got there. And Sean Payton was nice enough to criticize him, you may recall, about how terrible he was. And they beat him last year in week 5 without Aaron Rodgers, and they dropped 31-21. They beat him. What do you think is going to happen this go-around with Hackett having his quarterback under center here? This is going to get ugly, Ben. Give me the Jets.
And it wasn't just Sean Payton taking uncalled for shots against Nathaniel Hackett, who was not good in 2022, fired after 15 games. It was also Aaron Rodgers standing up for his guy in Nathaniel Hackett, taking shots back at Sean Payton. He did not get the shot to make those shots have some backing from his own performance last year, but a little bit of rivalry, bad blood, I guess you could say, although not rivals technically, a little bit of bad blood between these two organizations and the key factors and individuals in it. I didn't actually even think about that, Joe. I like that. And it's the premise that you use there that I take with me for my leg of the teaser that must hit this week. It can't not, right? We can't lose another one. You take 7 down through those two key numbers of 7 and 3. I do the same. The Chiefs down to a point favorite on the road in LA against the Chargers. It's not even Justin Herbert that really I'm concerned about. It's the fact that Justin Herbert's offensive linemen are not healthy. If he is hobbled, all right, maybe he can't move around the pocket as much. If the guys that are tasked with keeping him upright cannot against a good Chiefs defense to start, that's bad. All right, how do the Chargers keep this game close? Running the football as we saw them do prolifically in the first 2 weeks. Well, if your offensive line is banged up, who's leading the way for J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards? I think KC wins this game comfortably. I'll take it down to just having to win by 2 points or more.
Yeah, and I agree. And listen, by the way, Kansas City's red zone offense has been terrible. So I don't see them running up the score on anybody here, Ben. So I love that play as well.
Joe Ranieri, appreciate your time as always on this Friday. We'll talk tomorrow during college football in-game live. Game day, you'll see Joe starting at noon Eastern time. I'll be there on College Football Today with Joe Lisi and Kevin Walsh at 9 a.m. Eastern. In terms of the early line, we'll talk to you Monday, 8 a.m. Eastern. Have a great weekend.